in Veracruz has forced the United States and Mexico into an emergency security alliance after a journalist was taken out in broad daylight. Gunmen stormed a family-owned taco shop, fired more than 30 rounds into a 25-year-old reporter, and recorded the murder using GoPros. This wasn't random violence. It was a calculated execution meant to silence the press and show who really controls Veracruz. And this time, the brutality was so blatant and the footage so damning that the Mexican government was forced to respond and even call in the help of the United States.
And the Committee to Protect Journalists is emphasizing that the government is not doing enough. They want them to take action on these ongoing threats to journalism, particularly since so many of these murders have...
A powerful Mexican drug cartel has allegedly taken responsibility for the kidnapping of 4 U.S. citizens and killing 2 of them. Now they apologize. Meanwhile, the bodies of the 2 killed are now back on U.S. soil. Derek Dennis has details.
The date was January 8th, 2026. Carlos Castro was behind the counter at Trogbiria, the small taco shop his family owned in the Cazones neighborhood. It was around 7 p.m., and he was doing what he did every evening, working the restaurant while managing his news page. He had no idea that armed men were already circling the block looking for him.
A dramatic image out of Matamoros, Mexico. 5 men found tied up near a pickup truck in the same area where the abduction of 4 Americans took place. A handwritten note on the truck's windshield claiming to be from the Gulf Cartel, saying, "We have decided to deliver those involved and directly responsible."
And what makes this murder so disturbing is that the hitmen filmed everything. A 35-second leaked video shows the assassination squad talking to each other over radio frequencies as they closed in. They knew exactly where Carlos was standing. Witnesses say multiple armed men entered the restaurant and opened fire without hesitation. Over 30 bullets were fired into Carlos Castro's body, while terrified customers hit the floor. The killers didn't even try to hide their faces. They didn't need to, because in Veracruz, everyone already knows who's really in charge, and it's not the government. Carlos was pronounced dead at the scene. His family's restaurant, the place where he'd grown up helping his parents, became a crime scene soaked in his blood. This was a calculated execution carried out by professionals who had been tracking him for...
I offered to send troops.
And she's just not willing?
She's concerned. She's a little afraid. The cartels are running Mexico.
Let's talk about why Veracruz has become the most dangerous place in Mexico, to tell the truth.
Have been terrorizing Americans for decades. We're going to destroy their business model and their lifestyle because our national security and the security of the United States as a whole depends on us taking decisive action.
Veracruz is strategically vital. It sits on the Gulf of Mexico with major port access, making it essential for drug trafficking routes to the United States. Multiple cartels are fighting for control. The violence isn't just gang on gang anymore. It's total territorial warfare where no one is safe. And here's what nobody wants to say out loud. The cartels don't just control drug routes in Veracruz, they control the government.
Now, at the same time, extortion, particularly through taxi drivers, has been a key revenue point for these organized crime groups.
Carlos Castro wasn't some investigative reporter working for a major newspaper. He was a 25-year-old kid running a Facebook page called Código Norte Veracruz, covering crime and security news in northern Veracruz state. But for the cartel, even something as innocuous as this was a threat, and that painted a target on his back. And that Facebook page made him a target. See, in Mexico, you don't need to work for the New York Times to get killed. You just need to post the wrong thing about the wrong people. And Carlos had been doing exactly that for months. He reported on cartel activity. He covered police corruption. He exposed violence that local authorities wanted buried. And the cartels noticed. In the months before his murder, Carlos started receiving death threats. The messages were direct and brutal. Stop reporting or die. He reported the threats to authorities. He asked for protection. He begged someone, anyone, to take the threats seriously. Nothing happened. He was his own. But what makes this absolutely horrifying? Just 48 hours after Carlos was buried.
She's very frightened of the cartels. They're running Mexico, and I've asked her numerous times, would you like us to take out the cartels? No, 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 Mr. President. No, 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 please. So we have to do something because we lost. The real number is 300,000 people, in my opinion. You know, they like to say 100,000. 100,000 is a lot of people.
His 23-year-old girlfriend, Wendy, and her best friend, Karimi, vanished without a trace. After the funeral ended around 3 p.m., most mourners left, but Wendy and Karimi stayed behind with friends. They were last seen leaving the cemetery together around 5 p.m., walking toward the parking area. By nightfall, both women had completely vanished. Their phones went silent. No calls, no messages, nothing. Their families tried desperately to reach them. Then, hours later, later in the middle of the night, both families received identical texts from their phones. We're in Tuxpan. Tuxpan is a city notorious for cartel violence and mass graves. It wasn't somewhere either woman had reason to visit, especially not in the middle of the night after burying their murdered friend. Days passed, then a week, then two. Nothing. Governor Rocio Nale confirmed investigations but offered no leads. The Attorney General said there was no confirmed connection between the disappearances and Carlos's execution. Nobody believed that lie for a second. The timing was too precise. Two women intimately connected to a murdered journalist vanish within 48 hours of his funeral after receiving strange texts claiming they're in a cartel-controlled city. Local officials are either on cartel payrolls or they're dead. They run cover for the cartels in various ways. The police force works directly for trafficking organizations. Municipal governments launder cartel money through public contracts. It's a shadow government where criminal organizations make the real decisions and elected officials are just puppets reading scripts. For journalists, this creates an impossible situation. How do you report on corruption when the mayor taking bribes also controls the police who are supposed to protect you? How do you expose cartel violence when the cartel members are literally inside the state government offices?
We look at the bigger picture. These homicides only confirm what we already know, and that's Mexico's the most dangerous country to be a journalist in the whole world.
You can't. So most journalists in Veracruz practice what's called autocensura, self-censorship. They don't report cartel news. They don't investigate corruption. They don't ask questions, because the ones who do end up like Carlos Castro, bleeding out on the floor of their family's restaurant.
Most Americans don't understand is that when they see this mass flow of people across the border, what they're looking at has been described to me as the largest form of modern slavery in the world. Because, and I've seen this with my own eyes, so many of the people coming across will have a little card in their pocket or a number written down, which is a routing number for a bank account for the cartel.
But it gets worse. Veracruz has become what press freedom organizations call a journalism graveyard. Since 2000, at least 32 journalists have been murdered in this one state alone. 32. And almost none of those murders have been solved.
More than 90% of all crimes in Mexico against journalists and against human rights defenders never actually reach a verdict in a court of law.
The message is clear. Kill a journalist in Veracruz and you'll probably get away with it. The cartels know it. The corrupt officials know it. And most terrifying of all, the journalists know it too. That's why Carlos Castro's murder hit differently, because this time, the killers were so confident, so untouchable, that they literally recorded themselves doing it and nobody stopped them.
And this is all happening in a context of extreme violence perpetrated by very powerful organized crime groups all over the country, often working together with corrupt authorities.
We are going to start now hitting land with regard to the cartels. The cartels are running Mexico. It's very, very sad to watch and see what's happened to that country.
3 days after Carlos Castro's body was found, something unprecedented happened. The United States and Mexico released a joint statement announcing a new security cooperation framework specifically targeting cartel violence against journalists and press freedom. Now, you might be thinking, haven't they done this before? Haven't we seen these promises 1,000 times? Yes, but this time feels different. President Claudia Sheinbaum, who took office in October 2024, has been under massive international pressure over journalist killings. Human rights organizations have been screaming about Mexico's press freedom crisis for years, but most governments ignored it. Then Carlos Castro was murdered on camera by cartel hitmen who coordinated the hit over radio like they were ordering something. And suddenly, the world couldn't look away anymore. The joint US-Mexico statement is only happening because the situation has gotten so catastrophically bad that ignoring it is no longer politically viable. Let me put this in perspective. Under Sheinbaum's first 100 days in office, 11 journalists have already been killed in Mexico. 11 in 3 months. That's one journalist murdered every 9 days on average. And those are just the confirmed murders. That number doesn't include the dozens of journalists who've been kidnapped, beaten, threatened, or forced into exile. It doesn't count the hundreds practicing self-censorship because they're too terrified to report the truth. Mexico is now the deadliest country in the Western Hemisphere for journalists, more dangerous than any active war zone in the Americas. So yes, the United States and Mexico are finally working together, but many people are asking, is this genuine change or is this just damage control after international embarrassment? Carlos Castro himself had requested protection before he was killed. His requests were ignored or buried in bureaucracy until it was too late.
Imagen del golfo.
Let's zoom out and look at the bigger nightmare that Carlos Castro's murder represents. Since 2000, at least 162 journalists have been murdered in Mexico. 162. That's not a statistic. That's a mass grave of people whose only crime was doing their job. And here's what should terrify you. The killing rate is accelerating, not slowing down. Under President López Obrador's administration from 2018 to 2024, at least 54 journalists were killed, making his government the deadliest 6-year term for press freedom in modern Mexican history.
Perhaps the most devastating consequences of this wave of unprecedented violence in Mexico is silence. Journalists are increasingly indulging in censorship because they are terrified. They are afraid to report.
Now Scheinbaum has inherited this crisis, and her first 3 months show it's getting worse, not better. But why? Why are journalists being slaughtered at this increased pace?
Even with some efforts to protect the press, the fact remains, journalists in Mexico are facing undeniable threats to their lives and their livelihoods.
Because
he was one of the most revered journalists in Mexico. Javier Valdez's murder, just 1 block from his office, has shocked the journalist community. He was known for his work covering drug trafficking and organized crime in the northern state of Sinaloa.
In cartel-controlled territories, journalists are the last obstacle between criminal organizations and total information control. Reporters Without Borders ranks Mexico 141st out of 180 countries for press freedom. Worse than Russia, worse than Iraq, worse than most authoritarian dictatorships. Entire regions of Mexico now exist in what press freedom groups call information blackouts, areas where no journalists dare report because they know it's a death sentence. The result is that huge portions of Mexico effectively have no free press anymore. Citizens living in cartel-controlled territories get their news from cartel-approved sources, or they get nothing at all. Truth has become a luxury that only the brave can afford, and most can't afford to be brave when bravery costs you your life.
It's corporate-scale industrialized corruption sanctioned at the highest levels of the Mexican government with one brazen goal: to bleed America dry from the inside out while owning and controlling an entire country. And the ways this gets...
What do you think? Is this new US-Mexico alliance going to actually protect journalists, or is this just another empty promise that will fade away while bodies keep piling up? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more in-depth coverage like this. Click on any of the videos on your screen right now to keep watching.